the woke campus is a very real problem. It's a problem for Israel. It's a problem for education in general, because BDS is the tip of an anti-liberal iceberg. The exclusion of the Jew is not that their Jew is one of the things that just we have to exclude. The Jew is the basis upon which that whole BDS intersectionality is based. Jewish claims for exceptionalism, Jewish claims for being in Western culture first. For me, it's important to provide a story, a narrative for students who are facing BDS loud and clear on American campuses.
It's important to see that in the 20th and 21st centuries, the two sides of this, the intellectual anti-Semitism and what I would call the street anti-Semitism, came together in the concept of modernity. And why did they come together? For the very reason that as countries became more democratic, more people had the vote, the upper classes needed to mobilize the masses. And anti-Semitism became, of course, a useful mechanism that you could, because it had this strong intellectual, philosophical underpinning, which was very deep. People who were Christian knew about deicide, and also the practical side. And of course, people like Nietzsche, the philosopher Nietzsche, already knew about this ressentiment, the resentment of success.
My thesis is, and it's not anything original, is that what we have right now is in Western Europe and Central Europe is the Western and Central Europeans, I'm engaging in a broad-based generalization, so put this in scary quotes, won't forgive the Israelis for the Holocaust. So Western European governments and Central Europe are so obsessed, pathologically obsessed, I would argue, with bashing Israel and demonizing Israel. And that's largely, from my perspective, because of the Holocaust.
The hatred, it's no more doctrinal, but I would say of fantastical order. And so what is anti-Semitism compared to anti-Judaism? Anti-Semitism is an invention. Then the Jews are not hatred for what they are, but for what they do not are, for what they are not. It means evil creature, they're not, but they are considered then as evil creature with murderous practices, poisoning wells, killing children, spreading diseases like the plague, etc. And it's in the Middle Age then the Jews became responsible of the misfortune of the world.
And Yassin, who founded Hamas on December 9th, 1987. Ahmed Yassin suggested at the time, he said, our slogan is that killing Israelis, killing Jews, is an act of devotion. It's not an unpleasant necessity. It's not to get rid of the occupiers. It's to purge and purify the world of evil. Now, who is Hamas? They tell you in their charter. And if you want to say, well, they revised that, nothing in the so-called revision contradicts anything in the charter.
We need to redefine again what is anti-Semitism, because in the past, the definition was very simple. It was about being prejudiced to Jews, as a religion. It has its roots in being anti-Christian, being anti-Jesus. It had its Christian roots, but it was the simple way of defining it. And that's where the prejudice against Jews became in Europe, mostly. But initially, it was against Jews as Jews. And that's part of the evilness of it. Now, in modern times, when Israel was established, and then there was Zionism, and then Israel established, and now in modern times, there is a linkage between Israel and anti-Zionism.
Essentially, all the Jewish communities in the Arab world were uprooted. Most of them arrived, meaning the poor, arrived in Israel and became citizens of the Jewish state. The minority of them, being the middle class and the wealthier Jews from Morocco, Tunisia, etc., ended up in France or in England. From Baghdad, they ended up in England and were resettled in the West. And thus the Jewish Arab refugees, the problem also evaporated because they were absorbed and became citizens of other countries, not wanting to go back to the Arab states. And this, of course, they are different from the Palestinian Arabs who want to go back to their homes. The Jewish refugees from the Arab lands don't. But in both cases, the communities lost enormous amounts of wealth as a result of being pushed out.
What we got here, again, and I would like actually to make a long story short, is this crescent, which is depicted by Arabs as Hilal al-Shi'i, which is the Shiite crescent. What Iran has managed to do in the recent decades is to capitalize on the ongoing weakness on some Arab neighbors. Lebanon was first, Iraq was second, and in the last decade, actually, Syria came to be seen an easy prey for Iran, as to create kind of a corridor being stretched from the Persian Gulf, as the Persians would depict it, to the eastern flank of the Mediterranean. Now, this is a fait accompli. States like Lebanon are not kind of a normal states. They have been kidnapped.
They're using the slogan of Palestinian cause to attract the young people in the West. They have no idea about what happened in the Middle East to their side, not only to get their support, but even to get their money. And they send the money after that together. So all what happened in the West, from the justice for Palestine, the students in the campuses, to support the terrorist entity of Hamas, not to support the Palestinians. So we need to separate between Palestinian cause and between Hamas. And at the end, we find out that there is nothing called Palestinian cause, all it about Hamas and support this terrorist group.